When George Lucas returned to Star Wars in the 90s to make the Prequel Trilogy, an early hire was concept designer Doug Chiang, who was tapped to head up the art department responsible for interpreting George's artistic vision and breathing new visual life into the Star Wars universe. Today, Doug is Lucasfilm's executive design director and is still responsible for the look and feel of Star Wars productions, ranging the gamut from The Mandalorian and Grogu film to Galaxy's Edge at Disney parks. Doug's artistic journey is meticulously documented in a magnificent 2-volume book celebrating his cinematic legacy. I visited Doug at Lucasfilm's art department to talk about his career, discuss his design philosophies, and dive deep into his iconic visions.
Doug, 800 pages, all about you.
I know, it's actually very intimidating because I remember putting this together. One, I found artwork that I'd never seen for like years.
That's what I'm so curious about the whole process of unpacking yourself to a certain extent.
Yeah. No, it was terrifying. And, and the funny thing is, Alex and Jill's, I have to give them a lot of credit because they saw some value in the art. Mm-hmm. Because, for me, a lot of the stuff that I did outside of Star Wars, I kind of just put to the side because I thought, this is just my personal work. No one's really going to care. Yeah. And they were the one who said, no, let's put it together because we want to tell the story of what it takes to become an artist in the industry. And I said, okay, if we're going to do that, I want to be very honest and open about everything. And so that's where the book is like, it has everything in here. Embarrassing art, embarrassing stories, everything.
Amazing. I mean, to me, that's like you're embracing the public that will witness this because none of us gets anywhere without making all kinds of spectacular mistakes.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing that, that's the part I honestly was very nervous about because it's very personal in terms of, the personal struggles that I went through to create some of these individual pieces. But then I also thought, that's the important part because I really wanted to do this as an educational thing for students.
Right.
Because I get constantly asked, I'm sure as you do, like, how do I break into the industry? How do I get in? What's the path? And there wasn't a straight path. This was my path.
Well, and what's funny is, too, your biography sounds quite linear if you lay out the high spots, right? Like saw Star Wars, worked on Star Wars.
Yes.
That sounds like a pretty linear path, but we know in the trenches, it's all triage.
Yes.
So it's incredible how far and wide this story winds.
Yeah.
I'm curious when the first time you became aware that Lucasfilm was a thing that existed.
Oh, it was right after I saw the film.
Okay.
It was through Starlog magazine. Do you remember that? Because I remember I bought the 3rd issue of Starlog. So I loved to read science fiction when I was young. And I remember I went to the bookstore after I saw the film and I saw that magazine. And it was like, wow.
And the film comes out, you're like 15, 16?
I was 15.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was in the bookstore, I found the novelization of Star Wars. So I read the book before the film came out.
Oh, fascinating.
And it was like, I remember, because it was Ralph's painting.
Right.
The one of his, it was the back cover of the X-Wings flying down the corridor. And there was something about his painting that really captured me.
Yeah.
And then so I flipped it over and it was like Star Wars. And I was like, oh, okay. I had no idea what it was. And I read it and I really enjoyed it. And the funny thing was that's, about a year later was when I heard that they were making the movie. And then I remember I saw the trailer on TV for the first time. And it was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like that. So I had to go and see it.
Oh my God, what an intersection.
Yeah. No, it was so surreal because that was kind of my was actually Ralph's painting.
I want to talk influences a bit because I was noticing certain influences. I wrote Ron Cobb here and Mobius over here, and I figure you're very familiar with those guys' work. But I was also thinking about your paintings are so cinematic. I'll wager you're a fan of Tarkovsky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's like that was my childhood because I just was a fan of all, this genre and of artists and of filmmakers. Yeah. Even though I didn't know who they were, I just gravitated towards their work. And that was my education. I literally copied what I saw.
Were you keeping pictures that you liked in a book or a morgue or just drawing them and keeping those in sketchbooks?
Just drawing. It was only later that I started to collect, my clip files where I could reference that. Back then, I really didn't know, who Ralph McQuarrie was or Joe Johnston. I saw their work, and that's when I slowly started to learn more about them. But I literally just looked at it and I liked what I saw. That's where like Ron Cobb was a huge influence. And it was like his style just spoke to me, just like Joe Johnston's style did. And so really it was like, that was kind of my own homegrown art school.
That's incredible. It sounds to me like, looking back over some of your older work, that you found a lot to recommend the young version of you, and that you were laying down perhaps some good groundwork.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's the funny thing. You can see all my influences and where I started, because you'll see a lot of Sid Mead in here.
Right,
Because
right.
you know, these artists had such a profound impact on me.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of style and form language. And literally, I learned by looking at all their work. And I learned, you know, really important things about what makes a successful design, even though I didn't understand the foundation of why it worked. I just kind of like instinctively kind of, you know, gravitated towards certain forms. And I think that's why Ralph McQuarrie's work really spoke to me, because there was a simplicity to his designs that actually captured everything that I wanted in terms of his composition. You know, prior to that, when I look at like Sid Mead's work, it was like my mind was blown. I had no idea how to even attempt
It's like a
that.
magic trick.
Yes, yes. But you know, Ralph and Joe, for some reason, I connected more with them because I could see their process, and I dissected little pieces from them.
Interesting. Also, the thing that really also blew my mind is that you've been making films forever.
Yes.
This is you at 17?
I was 15.
15
or 16, yeah.
doing stop motion space films
Yes,
with Lego.
this was right after I saw Star Wars, and I had to, of course, do my own version. So I went in the basement, and you know, my brother actually designed this Star Destroyer, his version of it. And I made it out of poster board, and with white glue, because you know I didn't know how to, you know, I didn't have access to styrene and proper materials, and then I didn't have access, obviously, to, you know, like proper stop motion armatures. And Legos turned out to be the perfect thing, and that's where I literally used the Lego legs, and then I built these little cardboard shells, and I painted them all up, and it was terrific because, you know, they were lightweight enough so I could animate without tie downs. And so this was kind of my poor man's way of, you know, doing what I saw on the big screen. And I learned so much, you know, because I'm not a proper model builder like you are. I just kind of like, you know, try to put stuff together as best as I could, you know, using the tools that I had. But you know, this phase of sort of my filmmaking process was so informative for me because I learned about lighting, editing, cinematography, stop motion, and design all in one.
And all of those anchor your drawings so that, I mean, whenever I was saying this to you off camera, every time I look at any of your drawings, I want to build it. Like it's always so physical. I'm like, I always know what the other side should look like.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, and that's a really hard thing because, you know, that's the thing I appreciate from you, because I know that you're an artist and you can see the designs. So sometimes a lot of my sketches you'll see, I only finish half of it. And some of it is because, you know, I know the other half has to look like this. And so I don't bother. And in some ways it makes the drawing more lively and fresh. And I remember one time I gave one of these drawings to Michael Lynch, and not to embarrass him, but I didn't finish it. And literally he copied the drawing exactly, and he didn't finish the other part. And it was kind of like, at that time I was like, I was so embarrassed that I didn't want to say like, okay, no, just like continue those lines and those details. So I just let it go. I said, great.
Hilarious.
So there's a picture over here. This is 95. Is this the first year you got here?
No, I actually was hired at ILM in 1989.
89, okay.
Yeah. And so this is this was me working on Terminator 2, right at the transition of going from photochemical to digital filmmaking.
Holy cow.
And it was really terrific.
The whole pipeline has changed.
Yes. And I was, you know, this is in Photoshop. So I actually was one of the first to do like digital paintouts.
Right, you're working on a beta of Photoshop, right?
From John, no, exactly. No, and that was the crazy thing is, you know, because I grew up doing traditional art.
Right.
Pen and ink and acrylic paint. And the Mac was something new to me. I'm not a computer guy at all. And I remember when John Noe showed me the software, I mean, all of us in the art department saw the potential of what it could do. And so one of the things that we wanted to do on Terminator 2 was, prior to coming to ILM, I worked at a company called Digital Productions in Robert Abel. So I was already designing and directing TV commercials, computer-generated TV commercials. So I felt very comfortable designing for the limitations of computer graphics. And that's why I got to work on T2. And the really amazing thing about this photo is that when we started that, computer graphic was so hard, you know, that it just took forever to do anything. And despite all the software that we had, we could only achieve about 95% of the finished product. And the final 5% was just impossible. It would have taken too long. And so Dennis Muren said, well, Doug, can you just use Photoshop and hand touch up all the errors and paint it out? And that's what I'm doing here.
Oh my God.
So in this shot here, you see, you know, Robert Patrick walking through the bars. And you know, the first version, you know, the digital, 100% digital version works really well, but there's like weird shadow artifacts and intersections that just kind of, you know, didn't work because it was such a close-up. Right. So I went in there frame by frame and painted it out. And It was magical because we were actually painting on the actual frame that would show up on the screen.
Crazy.
And it was proof of concept that this workflow could actually work. And then the crazy thing was then Dennis really like elevated the bar. He said, well, can we do actual transitions in Photoshop? Just paint it all. And so if you look at the T-1000 when he's in the vat and he's sort of being destroyed,
Right.
he sort of malfunctions and goes through all these transitions. There are 3 of them in there that are completely hand painted. And believe me, it drove me insane because literally there were like 30 frames, but there were like 30 little matte paintings. And
Each one.
yeah, and Photoshop back then, we didn't have any onion layers, so I couldn't see what was there
So
before.
you got the A, B, A, B.
Yeah, and like trying to eliminate all the chattering from like, because I couldn't get the shadow to be right.
Oh, no.
It drove me insane. But magically it all worked. And there was this one shot in there where I just couldn't get this one like 5-frame sequence that I just couldn't get it to work. And then Dennis had a brilliant idea. He said, well, let's just paint the lava splash to cover it. If you look at the film now, it totally works.
That's institutional knowledge right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, T2 is a really good example of like digital technology at that time, but it's also like old school technology layered on top of digital. I think that was one of the most fun that I've ever had at ILM was, remember, we had the uptown and downtown model shop. Hanging out on the uptown, which is the upstairs, was great because that's where all the, the ships were being fabricated. Yes. And the great thing is that, it's in some ways easy for me to draw something, but to actually make it is so hard. And that's where it's like, I want to be responsible for it, but I can also like relax and say like, okay, here it is. Now you do it.
Well, I actually noticed as like, because I would be working on stuff and you would come through every couple of days. And I noticed that you clocked, oh, he can do stuff and I don't have to draw all of it.
Yes.
And very quickly you're like, you can just figure that part out.
Yes. No, and that was the great thing is that I did get to know everybody's skill set, as much like you. And so like I knew for you could interpret something. I don't have to like finish every line. And that saved a lot of time because in some ways, the way I kind of like to work is I want to see what you bring to the table.
Right.
How you can improve it. And almost always the model builders always made the design better, made it more real.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the great thing about the ILM model shop is that you can start with something as drawing and then the model builders will just like escalate it and build it to something even better.
So you talk about it in the book, but talk to me about like seeing Star Wars, making Star Wars films at 15 and then getting to Lucasfilm and working with the model shop.
Yeah.
That had to have been a heady...
Oh, it blew my mind. Because for one, I mean, doing my films, it was kind of, I was inventing it as I go. And of course, I looked at magazines and I saw the making of. So I kind of had a very basic idea of how they were doing it.
Right.
But my goal was always, okay, I'm going to either be a stop motion animator or a model builder. That was my goal. I wanted to work in visual effects.
Yeah.
And so when I actually got the opportunity to work or be hired at ILM, I remember my first day walking down the hallway, seeing Dennis Muir walk by. It just blew my mind because I'd seen all these guys, on documentaries and in books. And I was such a fan of all these guys. And just the fact that I was there with them, it was like, I couldn't believe I was actually walking down the hall with Dennis Muir.
I think the first time I passed him in the hallway, my brain was going, 7 Oscars! 7 Oscars!
No, exactly. No, and then what's even trippier is one of my first projects was actually designing this futuristic garage that Lauren Peterson was going to build.
Amazing.
And it was really wild because I thought, okay, I can design futuristic stuff because by then, I was drawing, as best as I could.
Right.
And so I got the design approved. It was for a commercial. It was actually for a display that was going to be not for film. So it was going to be a 360 display. And so I designed it all and I gave it to Lauren thinking that he would just take it and I would just see it when it's done.
Yeah.
And he was the one asking me, like, what do you think this color should be? What do you think this should be? And I was just like, wait a minute, I'm just the kid here. You're the expert. And it was just like, I would have to say was my whole experience at ILM is that everybody was so collaborative and open and everybody was learning at the same time. And I love that spirit.
That was the same thing I found when I first got there. And I was late. I got there in 98. But it wasn't until I watched Light and Magic and I saw the early hiring decisions that George made that I realized that he really was selecting for people who collaborate.
Yeah.
He was selecting for a group that was more than the sum of its parts.
Right, exactly. And it was always that fearless spirit of like, because none of them really had done anything at this scale before.
Right.
And that's that's the spirit that I really admire from everybody in the model shop was that all of our projects we would come in and we'll be like, are you sure you can do this? We've never done this before. But somehow we figure it out, collectively.
I'm curious about episode 1. I'm curious, is there a ship? I mean, I love the Naboo fighter, but is there a ship that was like the handle that helped you shake loose
the ships for episode 1. It was this one.
It was the N1. Yeah, no, I remember getting the brief from George that he wanted to go in a new direction for the aesthetic. Kind of blew my mind. Because, prior to getting hired, I was so primed to do like Joe Johnston or Ralph McQuarrie style ships, like the 1970s. That's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
And the first day that I, met George and he gave me a brief, he said, no, we're going to like set the foundation for designs. We're going to go back and make them sleek, more romantic. So think of it like going back to the 1920s where the ships were handcrafted. And it was like, part of me was really excited because I love shiny, sleek ships.
Yeah.
But then the other part was like, okay, I want to do a classic X-Wing as well. And so the Naboo N1 was a real challenge. I remember I chased the design for months because, George wanted something really sleek. And he said, make it like a chrome hood ornament. And I said, okay.
Right.
But I couldn't get my mind to think, how could that be Star Wars?
Right.
And I wasn't in that frame of mind that, George was laying the foundation for all that. And so I chased it. And then I finally found sort of this form that worked. And I realized that this is where I learned a lot about ship design from George. It's always about the silhouette, the iconic shapes. And so when I discovered that, okay, if you just take 2 engines, they could be like really sort of robust engines, but make them sleek and then put a cockpit in between it. That's what defines a spaceship for Star Wars. And then the layering of aesthetic now is the handcrafted component. And so I remember I made this thing really sleek, like, these tail fins.
Yeah.
They don't make sense, but they look great and they're elegant. And it looks like a chrome hood ornament. And I remember, when I first presented that design to him, and he actually liked it, and he said, okay, great. And he said, we're going to make it chrome. And I said, okay, terrific. It's a chrome hood ornament. But then the thing that blew my mind was he said, we're also going to paint it bright yellow. And the thinking was that, this is a culture that adores good, fine art. And so they're going to make a statement out of it. And it was also paying tribute to F1 cars where they're brightly colored.
Right.
And so when all those pieces came together, it was magic for me because it was like, I didn't quite understand where George was going, but when I saw it come together, it was like, that's perfect.
In talking about influences, I thought to myself, cinematic influences. And I opened up to this page and thought, Castle in the Sky, Miyazaki.
Yeah, no, absolutely. At this time, I didn't know Miyazaki's work as well, but I definitely saw it and it kind of like ingrained in my mind. So when I was doing the landing ship, I had chased this design for quite a while because, I was trying to find a form language that would work. Mm-hmm. And I went organic. I wanted to give them sort of animalistic personality. So I designed this like a dragonfly. Oh. And so that's why you have these 2 wings. And the really curious thing was that Miyazaki did almost the same thing, in his ships. Right. But I wasn't conscious of that. But then on top of that, what was even better was when I showed this to George, he liked it for a different reason. He said it looked like a World War II biplane. And it was like, you're right. The silhouette is exactly that. Yeah. And that's where the connection with the historical design foundation of Star Wars is so important. Because I think as an audience member, we always try to imbue a subliminal instinctual quality to the designs. Because even though we may not explicitly say that or explain it, the audience picks up on it and they connect it with something familiar, even though it's an image that's fantastic.
Right. Talk to me about this thing.
Yeah, this was a really funny collaboration with the design team of Porsche. And so this was in part to sort of see if we can actually utilize both our art departments, the film art department from Lucasfilm and the Porsche design team.
Right.
And the brief was, okay, let's collaborate on a spaceship. And we had 6 weeks to do it. It was
6 weeks?
Yeah, it was this crazy schedule. And what was really fun was that we want to infuse Star Wars design with Porsche car DNA. Right. And so if you look at the design, this was to sort of highlight, the Porsche Taycan. And so the headlights are taken right off of that. And what was really fun was that we wanted to come up with sort of a distinct configuration. And so we called this the Tri-Wing because it has 3 wings.
Right, right.
And so it was kind of like our version of taking an X-Wing, infusing it with Porsche DNA to create this new hybrid. And you can see here, there's very distinct Porsche details for these twin lights. And we wanted to really keep it real sleek. And I think the one really charming thing about this collaboration was just working with their designers. Because, they're all kind of cinematic designers in some ways. Right. Even though they work in reality of building a car, their timeline is very long. Like they'll spend years working on one car. And so to get them to sort of accelerate into this process was really fun because it was kind of this wonderful collaboration. Like, okay, we literally have 6 weeks to produce something.
They must have been delighted to see a result after such a short period.
They were. No, and what was really fun was that I think we captured the spirit of both. So you can see Star Wars DNA in here and also Porsche.
I know you're a longtime fan of them, and I'm assuming they're a bunch of hot young designers. They love Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's in their blood. So I'm sure there's a lot of cross pollination. I'm curious if you learned things about the Porsche design language that you had no idea about.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my
No,
God.
one of the things is, before we started, I actually got a little package of design specifications for Porsche, like what makes a Porsche car Porsche. And one of it is the side silhouette. There's a very distinct sort of slope that has to be there.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not Porsche.
Oh, so it's a specific
Yes.
curve,
Yes,
angle.
a degree. And then if you look at it from the front, it's what they call the hips or the shoulders, because you have the cockpit, the canopy, and then you have sort of the wheel well. And it's a very distinct shape.
Yeah.
And those are the things that was like, those two things have to be preserved if you're ever designing a Porsche car. And I had no idea. I mean, I see them every day.
Right, of course.
But I didn't know that was so specific to Porsche.
I love it when you get to learn somebody else's metric for executing,
Yes,
right? Because
yeah.
I'll bet for them, all sorts of aspects of the Star Wars design was like, what?
Yeah. No, it was almost the same thing because they're coming in and like, okay, well, how do we actually make it, so that it doesn't look like a car?
Right.
How can we make it like a spaceship? And one of the things is that we actually lean into F1 cars. So you'll see the seats are very much the same configuration, but we added 3.
Right.
Because we thought, okay, well, why not?
Yeah.
Because it should be like a car.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to do 4 seats like a car.
Of course not. Of
Yeah.
course not. And it's a tri-wing, so
Yeah.
3.
Yes, 3 works out really well.
And you guys have already used this in a couple of different shows. So
Yes, yeah. So this is all franchise legal. And so we've actually featured it in Obi-Wan Kenobi in the series and also Skeleton Crew.
Has it been made into a toy yet?
I don't believe so.
Because I imagine like all those Porsche designers are waiting for this to so they can put it on their desk.
I would hope so. I mean, getting this model was really great because, as part of the actual project, we actually built the 13-foot version, 2 of them. So one of them is in Stuttgart in the Porsche Museum and one of them is in Atlanta, but they're fully painted. And they're like, filming miniatures. They're done with such precision. It's all lit up and you can actually film it.
Have about the Razor Crest is after drawing it and it gets built as a model, you've actually been able to stand in it.
Yes. Yeah.
You've been able to visit.
I know.
Like that's a whole nother progression.
Yeah. Well, see, that was the actual test because, we were trying to create a new workflow for this. And so a lot of it, we knew we were going to build it, traditionally in terms of design it, but then we were going to do a digital version and then take it into VR where we could actually walk through the ship. And that was the real test because sometimes when you design a ship, there's a tendency to like design it too big.
Right.
So when you go into it, it always feels a little false. And so what we found is that when we do our VR scouts, everything can come down like 20, 30% and still preserve the aesthetic, but it makes it feel more real.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the great thing about that is that discovery happens very early on. So that informs set construction. And so it kind of like helps out with our budget as well.
Oh, wow.
And one of the fun things on this was, this is a design that Ryan Church and Renee Garcia did. This was the approved design. And we actually landed on this pretty quickly because, Jon Favreau really wanted this sort of powerful workhorse type ship.
Right.
So we designed the aesthetic of the outside, but then I had no idea where what
How it would lay out, right?
Yes. And so we actually broke it down and actually, did a cross section and made it all legal so that everything made sense. Because part of it was that, our early VR scouts, John actually went in the side door, climbed up the stairs and into the cockpit. And we wanted to make sure, that it actually functions properly. And for us, it was really doing our homework because we don't ever experience the top part, but it's all thought out in terms of there's storage space, there's actually an escape pod as well. And I think one of the really fun challenges was after we had designed this, later on, John wanted the Blurgs to come in here.
Yeah.
Because Mando captures him. And I was like, well, can that actually work?
Right. Can they fit in the Blurg?
Yeah.
You've got the Blurg here.
Yeah, we have the Blurg. And we actually put 3 of them in there and they squeezed in there, but they worked. So it's kind of like, that kind of homework I think is really important, just for us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can cheat, but if we can make it all legally work, I think it just makes the film feel more authentic.
And are you able to be in there with John? Like you guys are there together in the VR space?
Yeah. So when we're doing the VR scouts, it's with all the heads of the department. And what's really good is that very early on, John can sit in the cockpit and the DOP can actually frame up with cameras and lenses and say like, oh, you know what? The window mullion is going to block the eye line or it's going to occlude this shot. Can we actually move it or make it thinner? And so we get all those answers very early on.
Wow. Do you remember the very first time you stood on a set that you had drawn the ship of?
It was probably on episode 1.
Okay.
It was actually getting to the cockpit of the N1.
That must have been amazing.
That was, because I love cockpits. And,
Yeah, no, clearly I know you love cockpits.
One of my dreams growing up was that I always wanted to build my own cockpit in my bedroom because I just want to sit in there and just pretend I'm flying a ship.
Yep.
And so I remember, I love drawing cockpits, and I remember sending those drawings over to London. And they were starting to build the ship already. And when I finally had a chance to go over there, they had the full thing built and painted. And it was like, I was just like a child again. Because climbing into it was surreal. You couldn't get me out of it.
I couldn't imagine. Every button does something.
Yeah. No, and it was kind of like, it's amazing that you get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
And then fulfill that dream to actually sit in there. And then the even more surreal part was that, for Mando Season 3, we rebuilt the N1.
Right.
But the hot-rodded versions.
I love that version so much. That must have been really fun.
That was such a trip because it was like a time warp. It was like going 25 years. Here's the same ship.
Yeah.
And then sitting in it was like surreal because we had the LED screen. And so we were like, they gave me the full experience. It was like a Disneyland ride.
You literally got to go?
I was in there and I was piloting it and you could see the screen. We were going down Beggar's Canyon.
Someone should just throw a womp rat
I know,
at you.
exactly, yeah.
I want to tell you that when I was 8 or 9 years old, I actually built a spaceship into the closet of my parents' guest room.
No kidding.
I carried home a refrigerator box. I painted a console. I made a window that was separated out from the back, which I painted black and made Starfield and lit it with Christmas lights.
Oh, so,
I literally sat in there and like went on missions in my head.
So you did what I wanted to do.
You got to do the most real version imaginable, man.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great.
I love the idea. So I would assume that virtual scout is now a regular part of the pipeline.
Yeah, we try to because, normally when you design something, the first step is always to go on the stage and like tape it out with sticks, try to get the sort of the physicality of it.
Right.
But again, you're like leaving so much to your imagination. With VR Scout, it's 1-to-1. You can put in there and then we can dynamically scale the set up and down, move walls.
While you're there.
Yeah, and so you're getting so much information and feedback from the director, like, a couple weeks into the schedule.
Yeah.
And it's always informative. And a lot of it is to really streamline the decision process so that we get the answers quicker and time is money. So that saves a lot.
It gets the answers quicker and it runs the mistakes off at the pass because you don't build something that's like, oh, it's wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to go on set and it's like, oh, wait, well, that window mulling you just put there, it's like, I can't see the actor.
I'm sure you've had that happen.
Yes. And then you have to like take a chainsaw to it and lop it off. So we try to avoid that as much as possible.
I love this Blurg model. Was the Blurg actually animated? This is a stop-mo puppet.
Yes. So part of the brief was that we wanted to try a variety of techniques, and Jon Favreau is very fond of old school, and so we thought, okay, well, we're going to do it digitally. Can we do 1 or 2 shots practically as a stop-motion puppet? And we were all like, yeah, let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll just default to digital. And so this is a stop-motion puppet with a full armature inside. It's latex foam. And Tony McVeigh sculpted it and built all this. And we actually did a little stop-motion animation.
What a great lineage. Tony sculpted maquettes for the original series, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I love the Blurgs. Especially, it would be so much fun to cosplay as one of these.
Yeah. Well, it has so much charm. I mean, this is it speaks to what makes Star Wars creature design so unique. Because this is like, a Phil Tippett design from, the Battle of Endor. And it just has so much personality. And I think that's the thing that, we try not to lose because sometimes if you make it too real, it loses that charm and personality.
It becomes like Wild Kingdom and it's separated from you.
Yeah. So there's a quirky Muppet quality to the creatures that we try to preserve.
So there's always a little anthropomorphization?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, welcome. This is my office. As you can see, I have a digital setup and also a practical traditional setup where I can do traditional drawings, pen and markers.
I'm curious how much painting you still do.
Not as much. I mean, the paintings are all digital now, but I still do sort of a lot of my early designs on Post-it notes. So my little thumbnail sketches. So I would always kind of start here before I go digital.
Amazing.
It's just easier for my brain to work that way.
It's like a lowest threshold of entry.
Yes.
So do you scan?
I do. Okay. I scan it. Well, I just take an iPhone photo and just send it over.
Yeah.
Because it's, they're usually really crude. But what I like is that when you're designing small, you're thinking about basic shapes. So you're not worried about details.
Right.
And that's so important for Star Wars is getting that shape right. Because then, that's the first thing that the audience reads.
The silhouette.
Yeah. And then the details come later. So the details always fill out the design, but they never determine it.
So talk to me about Trapoka City here. Because it's so... having worked on it, it was such a gigantic complex, right? Like each of these buildings is 1,000 feet across or something.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you even start to think about scales like that?
The good thing is that I could do pure design and not worry about execution. I left it up to you. No, and this was a fun project because the brief from George was that he wanted to establish something that was more unique and iconic. And if you think about Star Wars design, each planet had its own distinct style. And he originally said, well, let's think of something that we haven't seen before, which is a water planet. But on there, we want this very sleek city, almost like a spaceship. And so I kind of went in that direction. And one of the things that I remember seeing an old photo of an oil derrick in the stormy seas. And it was just this amazing, powerful image. And I thought, can we use that as the foundation for the city? And this is where then George said, let's make the city very much like 2001. Very sleek, all white with sort of bands of dark detail. Yeah. And so when I started sketching it out, I played with different ideas, trying to come up with different proportions.
I remember seeing that being on our desks while we were working on this.
And this is good. I mean, this is where the magic for me is. It's easy for me to draw this, but then to actually build it is a whole nother challenge because, as you can notice, or you've seen it personally, there are a lot of compound shapes.
Yeah.
And it looks good in 2D, but then how do you do it to make it actually work? And that's why I love this, because I can see you figuring out how these forms actually work to make it real. Because, that's, I think, part of the magic of cinema is that when you design something, it has to have that sort of believable quality that you can actually, feel and touch. And I think building it practically makes that difference.
We also did miniature sets of the interiors of these things.
Yeah.
Those were brutal.
Yes. No, and that was like, the brief on that was, how do you design sort of almost a aesthetically clean medical room? And it didn't have to have sort of the earth sort of logic in terms of how the structures were going to be. Because George just wanted clean, like a sterile room. And it was really fun because I just knew that, okay, we can paint this, we can draw this, but how do you build it? And I had no idea. And that's where it's kind of, I tossed it over to you in the model shop.
Well, some of the hallway stuff, we used real vacuum form because you guys wanted the reflection parameters from the interior.
Yeah. So I did some early mock-ups.
Oh my God.
So these were a little bit of Photoshop. So most of the work I did on the prequels were all traditional because I want to stay true to the original trilogy. Yeah. But I still, had sort of Photoshop in my toolkit. So these are Photoshop mock-ups of what the hallways could be. And that reflective quality, I think, was really important. Yeah. To kind of get that sort of surreal serenity that we wanted.
If I remember correctly, they were building a brand new digital pipeline while shooting that, where they were able to see some rough green screen composites really quickly. Like while the shot was set up. Yes. That was cool. Yeah. That was really neat to watch, to just watch that happening peripherally to what I was building.
No, that's where, the prequels, I mean, we broke so many grounds in terms of, reworking out the whole sort of production pipeline. And so much of it was so hard because, we could design it all, but then because some of these sets were so large, we could only build a minimal portion. Yeah. And a lot of it was green screen or blue screen. And it's so hard to, have the crew envision what it is because I can see it in my mind. George can see it in his mind. You could probably see it in your mind. But then how do we do that? And so that early days of compositing was like super helpful because then it got everybody on the same page.
Yeah. The other thing that's happening is with all the different franchises, arms of different Star Wars franchises, there's more people working on design than I would imagine than in the past. And I'm assuming that you're learning new things about Star Wars from all the other designers working on it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the great thing is because, the talent pool is expanding. And there's terrific young talent, and they come in with a different point of view. And, but Star Wars is a very specific aesthetic and universe. And so it's kind of taking that energy and guiding it to form and kind of expand what's here, because it's a fine line, because sometimes if you deviate a little too far, then it becomes something else.
After crawling through so many of these pages, it occurs to me that one thing I noticed is that you can't quite go, oh, this is a Chiang. You can't, there's not a thing that says this is a Chiang, but for you, there probably is. And I'm curious if you have tells, you're like, man, I wish I would stop doing that.
Yeah.
No. What is the Chiang tell that you're like, ooh, I did it again?
Yeah. No, it's combining nature with robots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nature, technology, and that. That's where I found my style. because when I was at ILM, I knew I had to up my game because I was the least skilled and least experienced of the whole art department, and I took a year. I gave myself a year-long assignment to like really improve, and out of that year, I found my style, which was really leaning into nature and technology and combining those two, mixing old and new, and that was the portfolio that George saw. And that was what George has been doing with Star Wars, because he likes to mix different timelines, different cultures, different form aesthetics. And so when I look at this, the thing that really speaks to me that has always been is like putting a weird gadget on an animal that we know today, or taking a robot and transforming it into some weird animal.
And a silhouette and giving it that kind of Is there? I love this loose style.
Yeah.
What is this? Is like a kind of almost just two markers, right?
Yeah,
2 or 3 markers.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of these, this was where I really started to hone sort of my marker skills, and marker drawings are kind of my go-to in terms of design, where I work with markers on Xerox paper.
Okay.
And specifically because you're not supposed to, and the reason being, I love the way it bleeds.
Oh, wow. You like the way the paper isn't behaving.
Yeah, no, because you can get happy accidents. So when I start these sketches, I always start with a 30% broad tip gray marker, and I would just sketch.
Oh, that's your first pass, not black.
Exactly. And I would have an idea of what I want to do, and I would just sketch. And literally the drawing comes to life because when it bleeds, it inspires other forms. And what I discovered is that the messier that phase is, the better the drawing, because I can start to see interesting forms. And so I get it to a point where if I showed it to somebody, they would look like, that's just a bunch of scribbles. There's nothing in here. But for me, I can see forms in the shapes. And then I go with a fine tip pen and I start to outline it. And that's the part that's really hard, because you have to really focus and pay attention to all your experience in terms of design to sort of delineate what those forms should be. The pod race was really cool because this was one of the first things that I did was designing what this pod race is. And honestly, the brief from George did not change from day one.
Really?
In the very first meeting, he said he wanted a very kinetic race, and he said this was his words. It was like, take 2 of the biggest engines and strap a cockpit to it, and that's going to be our vehicle. And at first, when I heard that, I didn't quite comprehend what he was getting, because I thought that doesn't make any sense. How can you fly that? One, you can't. And so my first instinct was to make it real. Okay, connect them together, make it like a spaceship. And his feedback, week after week was like, no, just take 2 engines and strap a cockpit to it. And what I realized was that was precisely what he wanted. He wanted the chaoticness and the uncontrollability of a pod racer.
Like a chariot race.
Yeah, to highlight Anakin's skill. That's why no human can do it. And so when I understood that, that's when I started to really lean into, proper design for that.
Amazing. I mean, these look like, this is such a classic illustrator style, right? For adcoms.
Yes. Yeah. And it's one of my, I like it a lot because you'll see, all of my drawings, all my spaceships are drawn this way. And it's just a fun way because, for me, it's almost like free-form drawing, where I just need a nugget of an idea, and then the drawing just takes a life of its own.
There's some of those hinges you like?
Oh, yes. Yeah. If you look at these, those are really important. And I studied mechanical hinges everywhere. I think, more hinges. And then the droids especially here. Let me see if I can find the battle droids. The battle droids are really fun because, I love robots, but trying to design a Star Wars robot was so challenging for me. Yeah. So the original idea was, these were the Neimoidians, the original design for the droid builders. And that's why they have the same elongated head. Because I thought they would build them in their likeness. And so that made sense to me. So that's why the battle droids have the same proportions.
Oh, fascinating.
And so this one here is a study of joints. Wow. Look, you see cabinet hinges here. You can see other kinds of joints there. And for me, I mean, I don't know. I just fell in love with joints, and then U-joints.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I noticed that you love that insect legs are right in that sweet spot.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there's a way for me to look at an insect and kind of break it down to its mechanics, because they're very, the exoskeleton is very mechanical anyways.
Yeah.
So I could easily translate that to something machined. So these were all early iterations of like everything that the battle droids could possibly do. And I just went to town because, I didn't know, specifically if there was any story points for this. So I just started inventing things like, the backpacks become shields, other weapons come out, they could fly. I know, it's like, and this is why, the very first year of working on Star Wars was just amazing because George just gave a very brief outline of it, of what he wanted, but I had no idea the context. And so we were literally doing pure world building, doing all the homework, all the foundational designs. And then once he had a story, he could cherry pick the ideas. But behind every drawing, there was a connection.
Wow.
Every design had an evolution. And I think that's why Star Wars for me is unique, because we have the opportunity to do that when we can, because it really lays out a real world, and the cinematic part of it is only a tiny fraction of that.
What we've seen in any of the Star Wars shows is an absolutely minuscule part of what is the universe.
Exactly.
You're totally right.
Yeah. No, that's where, it's rare, but, I love, like, I could explain exactly how one form informs and changes into another.
Right.
Because all that thought has been gone in there.
But also what you're describing is that George is coming not with a complete plan, but with actually just enough of a plan to kick this marvelous giant machine into motion to fill out what that plan might be.
Right, exactly, yeah.
That's incredible.
It is. No, and it's very unique in a sense, because then he's, kind of using sort of my sensibility as well and honing it and guiding it, because designing without a full context sometimes is actually really scary.
Right.
Because I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, what the target is. But at the same time, it's also very liberating because, I think one of the most terrifying things for this, though, was that the rules were like taken down, like the boundaries. As designers, as you know, we work best when we have a boundary.
100%.
Yeah. If we have a guideline, even if it's super restrictive, it gives us a form to design into.
Right.
For episode 1, it was like, no, everything was on the table. Don't worry about execution, don't worry about budget, just do pure design.
Terrifying.
And when you hear that, it's exciting as a designer because it's like, oh, I get to do whatever. But then right away, reality sets in. It's like, oh, I get to do anything. It's like, what does that mean?
Right. How do I bound?
Yeah.
You start to bound the problem.
Right.
Doug, it is such an amazing compendium. I really appreciate you spending time walking me through this history. I am curious about if putting this together has given you a different or more refined idea about the future of Star Wars, the future of Lucasfilm, your future.
That's a good question. I never thought I would have a chance to put all my work into a format that I could actually look. Not at my age anyways, because I still feel like my best days are ahead of me. I hope so.
Yeah.
But looking forward, what I realize is that as a journey for this was one path into the industry, and there are many. And I really want to show what that meant and show actually the work behind the art, behind the imagery, because sometimes, people don't really realize, all the heavy lifting, all the homework that we do behind the scenes. And I think it's important to show that, especially to aspiring artists, because I really want them to know that, okay, this is what it takes. You got to do your homework. And there's not one path, but this is one path. You got to find your own. Moving forward, I find myself the same way, where I'm still constantly learning every day. And I think it's really important because we have new tools now. And trying to keep up with a new, younger generation is like impossible. I mean, they are
totally impossible.
Yeah, they are so good with 2D, 3D, everything. I'm like a dinosaur. But the good thing is I hope I have the experience and the instincts to go forward. And I always take it on myself now to learn new tools like 3D, as part of my process, just as an educational process, because I want to keep learning and keep growing. Like even today, I mean, I still keep a sketchbook. I still do, ballpoint pen drawings just for myself.
Right.
I spend 1 hour every morning doing that. And it's something that I don't want to lose touch of because I feel it's so important. As an artist, you should be able to draw. And that fuels the other side of me so I can do my day job better.
Amazing. Doug,
Thank
you
you, sir.
so much. It's really inspiring. It's such a beautiful book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you.
deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate it.